Hello, and thank you for listening into this episode. Now, today I am interviewing someone who I've never met before, but has been in kind of an integral part of my life in my journey with NLP. I've got Connie Ray Andreas, Dr. Connie Ray Andreas. Welcome to the show, Connie Ray.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to me to be here speaking with you.
Me too. I I followed. I probably know more about you and your life than is comfortable for a stranger to know, because I've followed you. I'm very interested in how you became involved with neurolinguistic programming because you and your late partner Stephen Andreas were there pretty much right at the beginning or soon after.
Yes, we got involved very early on. It was the early days. At that point, everybody knew everybody. It was a very small club. Now NLP involves hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But
Yeah.
at that time, hardly anyone had heard about it. And so when we first heard about it, we were at a conference, and one of my husband's friends, one of Steve's friends, had somehow learned about NLP and started telling us about it. And Steve said to him, this is really interesting. Would you do a short introduction for us? And we convinced him to do that. And he and a small group of people, just ad hoc, we found a space, and he did this presentation, and we got really excited. It wasn't clear yet to me, completely clear. I didn't have time to test out, are these things he's saying really true?
Right.
I didn't have time to test them out. But both my husband and I could see from the beginning, wow, if this is true, this is amazing. If this is true, this is a complete paradigm shift for the world of therapy, for the world
Yeah.
of growth and change.
Because both you and your husband at the time, I think Steve was a Gestalt therapist with a
Yeah.
family history of Gestalt therapists, quite famous within the domain. And had you already done postgraduate work at this point?
I was, let's see, I was just beginning my graduate school career. This was in 1977
Yeah.
when we started in NLP. And I was, it must have been 75 was when I started my grad school, my doctoral program in clinical psychology. And so I was in the middle of that already. My husband, he wasn't yet my husband, but
No.
we were already close. And we were at a Gestalt conference, a Gestalt therapy conference, and the AHP and together, Association for Humanistic Psychology and the
Yeah.
Gestalt therapy conference. And yes, he had a strong, full career in Gestalt therapy. So for him, it was a big deal to give that up.
Yeah.
And people really wondered about it. A lot of people, once they develop a reputation in something, it doesn't matter how good the next thing might be, they stick with their reputation, you
It's
know.
true.
And it was one thing I always admired in my husband, and that how willing he was to make that shift when with just not a lot to go on even at the beginning.
Yeah. So was it soon after that you met Richard Bandler? Would it have been?
Yes, yes. As soon as, so in 77, that was when we learned about NLP. We went to our first workshops, and from that point on, basically anything in NLP that Richard Bandler, John Grinder were doing anywhere in the country that was 4 days or more, we were there.
Wow.
We just immediately, so for both of us, it was a big, we kind of took a big leap into it.
Right. And
Neither
a
of
lot,
us is important, and we
a big investment in time and finances to do that.
yes, it was. And as a graduate student, it was a kind of, I was doing this simultaneously with my graduate studies.
What?
It wasn't anything that anyone in my graduate program had ever heard about.
No.
Um, but I was really, really enamored with this new approach. It's
Right.
like Steve and I were both our jaws were dropping, we were going, wow, there's
Yeah.
something here. And it was several things that I'm sure you and many of our listeners are familiar with. It was the precision. It was that we were talking about direct experience,
Yeah.
not just about sensory based experience, not just about theories.
Yeah.
And we were talking about human problems and skills more like a computer programmer does.
Like an algorithm.
Yeah. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be depressed, I have to get myself there somehow. The
Yeah.
cause is immediate in the moment. If I'm doing it right now in the moment, it's happening in the moment. So that was a radical shift in how to think about problems as well as solutions.
Because it's moving away from trying to grapple with the meaning and gain insight into the structure of how the experience is being created.
Yes. Rather than getting lost in the content of things, the
Yeah.
meaning of things, and interpreting and coming up with more what we could describe as more mental insights, it gave us the capacity to have insights at a structural level,
Yeah, I get
the
it.
structure of experience.
Yeah.
And that meant we could make changes much more quickly and much more efficiently and reliably.
Hmm.
And, sometimes people would say at the very beginning, sometimes people would say, well, isn't that kind of dehumanizing to think about people like a computer program? And we would go, well, when we're sitting, like, I remember what comes to mind is working with a Vietnam vet um, who had post-traumatic stress syndrome, and he couldn't reliably not be violent, not be,
Yeah.
these nightmares would come. He'd wake up in a sweat swinging.
Yeah.
His wife couldn't sleep with him because she was in danger, you know. So, but what we did is not talk to him about the content, but
No
from
need.
NLP, we went right to the structure. I was able to guide him through what you probably can guess, the
Yeah.
phobia trauma process.
Yeah.
And, it took a little longer because he was so frightened to do it. But once he did it, it happened quickly. And in 45 minutes, he was a changed person.
Yeah. And he didn't have to believe in the process, just follow the instructions.
Yes. And after that, I mean, nobody could say this was a dehumanizing process. He
No.
he was so relieved. He had his life back. You know,
Yeah.
his relationship
A-
with his
And
wife.
of and of course his problems and behaviors were on automatic anyway. They were being triggered outside of consciousness, and he had no conscious control of when they were going to turn up.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because in the UK, 50% of people diagnosed with PTSD are resistant to the talk-based therapies that are available for them. Um, the other
Interesting.
the other thing in the UK, and I was interviewing a doctor from Oxford, a third of women in the UK currently label their birth experience as traumatic. That's
Oh,
250,000 a year.
that's so interesting. Yeah, and so sad. So
Tragic.
sad. Such a amazing, what a potentially amazing part of life does become traumatic sometimes, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's because of the difficulties someone faces. It's just a friend of the family almost died in childbirth. There are those realities that can happen, of course, with
Yeah.
our kind of modern with the ways we can support people on the physical level.
Yeah.
It's generally a very, very safe process,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
kind, gentle. you know
Absolutely.
Mark, that brings to mind a specific example I'd like to share about childbirth, or having children, because I have three. And so I went through the process three times, went through my own fear,
Yeah.
of like, and um, I think looking back on it, it ended up being, those are three of the most memorable experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And more important than the birth itself is what it gave rise to, of course, my three children
Yeah.
and all that that gave to me and to my family. And it's just such a blessing. So I like to support people in that position so that they can experience the blessing that it is, so that
Absolutely.
they're giving new life. They're, it's a miracle. It's an amazing thing. And to be able to be present for that, including embracing our fears, is part of it.
Yeah.
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 So the experience I wanted to share with you, though, is a young woman spoke to, she was pregnant, and she was having a recurring nightmare that there was something wrong with her baby. And she would wake up in a sweat and, it's like, and very nervous, in a panic.
Mm.
Um, and it was happening over and over again. So she was worried that there could be some truth to it,
Yeah.
maybe 3 minutes. So it was getting these negative thought cycle. So I did a very simple process with her. It's the wholeness work, which
Right.
you and I are going to talk about at some point.
Yeah. Keen.
This is my newest work, the wholeness work. It's in a way the simplest, deepest work that I know of. It's simpler, deeper. I think it fulfills that early promise of NLP. Like when
Elegance.
my husband and I first got introduced to the field, and we went, "Wow, there's something here. This is amazing." The reality is, looking back on it, it couldn't quite deliver yet.
Yeah.
It was really in the very early phase. It was the infant phase. It couldn't walk yet. It couldn't even toddle yet.
And
And
reading about it, it kind of reads like the Wild West.
yes, yes, no kidding, no kidding. Yeah, yeah. So we could get into the Wild West if you'd like, but
Well,
I also want to say
stay.
a little more about the story
Yeah.
with
Carry on. No, this is good.
the young woman. So the wholeness work, I think, really, I've had several people who've been in NLP from the early days tell me, this is really finally making good on the promise of NLP. This can really do that deep, deep change work that I had hopes for from
Mm.
NLP. So, because I think it does go to a deeper level of change than previous, and it gets changed faster and more completely and more reliably. And it's simpler and it's kinder, also kinder and
Yeah.
gentle. But without more about that, with this young woman, she was nervous, and so I asked her to think about the dream, and we just did a very simple wholeness work process. And after that, she said no more recurring nightmares.
Wow.
She felt comfort in the pregnancy process, and her baby, after when it was born, was 100% healthy,
Yeah.
110% healthy, totally fine.
That's amazing. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, apart from the fact, uh, um, the influence that your family has had on my life, it's a pleasure and a privilege to talk to you. I'm convinced, having done the online wholeness process and read the book, um, that your process that you teach would be invaluable for birth professionals to learn. Um,
I
so
think so. I think it can give them a very simple way
yeah, that's the thing.
of helping the woman and the family members possibly too,
Definitely.
to stay in the moment and
Yes.
be able to be right there, embracing the moment. And
Yes.
that helps us so much. Be just
Yes.
really to be able to, well, it's, for one thing, it's just nice to be able to be present there for this
Yeah.
experience. But it also means then the woman and everyone around has more capacity to sense what is really needed. What is my
Yes.
body wanting right now to support this process?
Do you know, I hadn't even thought about it in that perspective. I was thinking about those 250,000 women that were suffering afterwards. But of course, you've hit the nail on the head. I wrote a book 4 years ago called Men, Love and Birth, and the whole emphasis of the book is teaching a cis heterosexual man, how he can be present at the birth of his baby, not just in the room, but
Yeah.
space for the birth to unfold in. And it
Yeah.
hadn't occurred to me that the wholeness process is the way into the experience of spaciousness for
Yeah.
what's occurring.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It gives it a simple way that it's not
Yes.
mental, but just to do it. It's more direct and easier than something like mindfulness or all these
Abs-
other approaches.
and not clothed in all that kind of mystical spiritual language. So the process is kind of accessible to a person who has no spiritual background at all. And
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
perfect. Yeah. Well, let's get
Yeah.
into it then. Let's get into it. So I've read all the books that you've edited, that everything, and you're very open about saying you're the worst client on the planet, and that you really had trouble testing the patterns in your own experience because you struggle to get stuff to work for you.
Yes.
Is that fair to say? Is that where you were at?
That's very fair. That's accurate. Yeah. That was the truth. I didn't like admitting it at the time, but that was the honest truth. Yeah, I
Right.
would have rather been one of those easy clients, and some of which I was fortunate enough to have. But almost anyone was easier than me in truth.
Right.
So, yeah, it was. But once I really admitted that to myself, it freed me up to find what then I've been able to find, because it's what helped me realize I needed something that went deeper, that was somehow better than anything I knew so far.
Right. And there's a model before, the core transformation model, and there are similarities in terms of the process, but I know you're very clear they're not the same.
Right. They're quite different. The way I would describe it is that the processes are completely different,
Right.
but that they're working in the same direction.
Right.
So they're aligned. They have,
Got it.
in NLP, we have this list of presuppositions. Depending on which trainer, there are maybe 9 or maybe 13 or 12, or, but there's these list of presuppositions. And what the wholeness work trainers and I have been doing is creating a list of presuppositions for wholeness oneness work.
Right.
And they're different. They're different presuppositions than the
Okay.
classical NLP presuppositions,
Okay.
because we're working at a deeper level. And the core transformation and the wholeness work are both working at this deeper level than classic NLP.
Right.
Classic NLP is great. It helped this. I see the changes that it makes. It
Yeah.
does amazing things. And for PTSD, that phobia trauma cure, I use it still.
Yeah. Well, you say it's. I believe it's great. Its academic heritage probably needs to be talked about more. About transformational grammar, general semantics, cybernetics, systems theory. All of these things that are in its kind of roots. But I kept my involvement with NLP undercover for about 20 years as a midwife. And the reason I did that, because I was using it every day.
I see.
The reason I kept it quiet was if you Google NLP, you come up with a load of wackos.
Yes, you
And
really do.
and as a professional who's registered with the Nursing and Midwifery Council, I didn't want to ally myself with a discipline that was completely unregulated and seemed to be full of fruitcakes. I'm serious.
Mark, yeah, I like the graphic way you put that, and it's totally true. I totally get it.
And but it was people like you that and your late husband who added credibility to the field. And probably people like Professor Grinder, to some extent Dr. Bandler. I think he's a genius and all the rest of it, but you don't have to delve too deeply into his history to be quite shocked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, but I'm out now, and I tell everyone about about the process. Do you,
I, I'm glad you had the courage to be out as an LP person. I think it's always wonderful to I don't know, the more people doing it with integrity and heart,
yeah,
like you're doing for the service of people, the better.
yeah,
Then this whole it is a science, it's a science, and any science can be used for the good or the not good.
yeah,
Um, so in that sense, the more people are doing it from a place of heart and integrity, the better.
yeah,
But
agreed.
there's something else I'll add to that. I think that with core transformation and wholeness, because of the way they work, because they're at this other level yet, it's still a science. It's like it's the science
Yeah,
of awakening. You could call it the science of awakening,
yeah,
of what spiritual teachers are talking about, but you don't have to use spiritual words. But the interesting thing is that you really can't use it for the not good.
mm,
You really can't.
yeah. You can't seduce women with this pattern.
You exactly. You can't. You can't do these things and do that kind
Well,
of stuff with
well,
it.
it's funny you should say that, but I was in a training a number of years ago, and it was a quite famous person, so I won't say who it is. Um, Although this might give them away. They were moving away from NLP into three principles and all Sid Banks, three principles, Sydney
Yes,
Banks,
yes. I'm
and
familiar.
yeah, and which it is a non-dual teaching, really, if you look at it. And I questioned the trainer and I said, well, given the presupposition that all human experience has structure and that NLP is the study of the structure of human experience, this spacious experience that you're talking about should have structure too, right?
Yes, yes.
And he
And
said,
the
no.
way
He said, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
He
Well,
said,
and I will say, Mark, that the three I've looked into the three principles. After developing the wholeness work, I was in hibernation for a while, and then the wholeness work came out of that, and then I kind of came back into NLP and discovered what are people doing now in NLP, and so I looked into the three principles, and what I noticed there is that it's like what often happens with NLP. There's a recognition that there's something of value here,
yeah,
but not knowing how to study it at the structural level.
yeah,
So it ends up being more fluffy and not really giving us a precise, reliable way to access the same thing.
yeah,
So that's what I think is unique about the wholeness work, is it does give us a way to access these like you described, these
yeah,
experiences of spaciousness, of well-being, of the natural goodness, oneness, the natural creativity, all this that's there. The ability to access it in a precise way.
yeah. I get that. So, would you tell a little bit about? I know that you were unwell, and that you were in fear even of your own life, and you were at a point where you were desperate. And we already know you're a poor client. You weren't responding to the what was available in NLP, and you went on to a search into spirituality. Would you kind of say more about that search and how it led to the wholeness process?
Yes, yes. I think what made it possible for me to come up with the wholeness work, I'll start there, is that I was feeling desperate, and very much thinking I probably wouldn't live long.
Yeah.
Um, I was experiencing there were lots of physical symptoms. The most striking and strange to me was that it felt as if there was this surge of electricity going up in my spine, my spinal column, as it felt as if there was this sparks coming out of the top of my head constantly,
Wow.
24/7. And it was very intense and it was disruptive. It was as if I was wired for um, maybe 110, but I was getting 220 or 440 or something way beyond what I was wired
Wow.
for. So I didn't know if my physical body could withstand it, whatever was happening. And I had no idea what was happening. I thought maybe it was this was, maybe this is what dying is like. I don't
Yeah.
know. Anyway, I really didn't know. And so because but I really wanted to stay alive. I wasn't ready to just
I'm
let
the
go.
same.
Are you on board for staying alive? I
Well,
thought, no,
most Christians are not in a hurry to get to heaven either. So I think we share it with most people.
yeah, I kind of wanted to stay right here in this body if I could. And so I was searching for anything that could help. And I tried in the medical community. They didn't know what was going on. They couldn't understand. They couldn't offer anything to me. We couldn't find any regular diseases that seemed to fit with what I was going through.
No.
Um, alternative health community, generally I couldn't find help there either. I did find a good acupuncturist who could somewhat settle my system. And
Right.
then later I found a really wonderful osteopath who was really good at settling my system. But I couldn't find anything that really transformed what was going on or somehow. So I was also looking, I thought, okay, NLP is not enough for this. Everything I know is not enough. And being desperate like that got me to the place where I was willing to give up everything I knew. Or perhaps I should say, I was willing to give up everything I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, realistically, most of us don't do that. We're not willing to just really give up everything. And
No.
I wouldn't have been either if I hadn't been faced with death. And but in that place, I was perhaps more open than I'd ever been to something. And I thought maybe spiritual teachers have some kind of insight that would help me. I'll investigate there. So I did. Sat with non-dual teachers, other this. I was mostly interested in spiritual teachers who had an experience of awakening and could describe their experience. I wasn't so interested in the theories.
Right.
I was interested in what is the
You,
experience.
you were. It was a modeling project, wasn't it? In a
It was. I didn't think of it that way at the time, but that's really what it was.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go into it saying, okay, I want to model these spiritual teachers. I went into it going, if they know something or have access to something that could help me, I want it. I want
Yeah.
to find out what that is.
They can be really irritating, though, can't they? In
Really,
terms of, well, non-dual teachers can be quite. I mean, I sometimes find them quite irritating because the way they respond to questions, there's this enigmatic response that makes
yeah,
very
yeah,
little sense at
yeah.
all.
Well, I was, yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. And there are a lot of teachers who I felt affection for.
Yeah.
And the ones that I felt were genuine, truly speaking from their own experience as best they could, they're the ones that I hung out with more,
Are you
But
are you reluctant to say who they were?
yeah,
Yeah, got it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
won't ask them.
Yes, yes. Yes, but I think it's good. It's better for each person to get clear on testing for themselves.
Yeah.
What I started to notice, though, was that they were teaching in an enigmatic way. It was more about being in the presence. And if
Yeah.
we sit here and we kind of meditate on, this spaciousness or something, then somehow we'll get it.
Impartation. Yeah, grace and
and
impartation.
and it I found that it could work for me in the moment. And I always kind of went back and forth, though, between just experiencing it the way they were inviting me to experience. Was many of them explicitly said there are no steps to this, there cannot be steps, and if you have steps, it's not the real deal.
Yeah.
So I thought they could be right. I'm going to give up my steps and just try to feel into it.
Yeah.
And then occasionally I would also come back to my NLP roots, I suppose. We could describe it and kind of go, well, what if there are steps? What
Yeah.
if there is a precise way to understand this? What if there's a structure to this, like you were bringing up earlier?
Yeah.
And that's how the wholeness work came to be. I'd go back and forth. Okay, let me explore. What if there were steps, to what this teacher is describing? And Ramana Maharshi is one teacher that I will name.
Yeah.
Um, it was his teaching that was the immediate inspiration for starting on the wholeness work,
Yeah.
because he had the teaching of people asking themselves, who am I, who am I, who am I? And I just changed the teaching a little bit to make it more process oriented, more structural oriented. So I went, what if instead of asking myself, who am I ask, where's the I located?
Mm.
And that's it's in one sense a simple change, but a very significant change. And that's what started what became basically a whole field now, the wholeness work.
Yeah.
Um,
And you've said, I've heard you say before that it's the only process really that's worked so effectively for you personally.
yes, yes, yes. It was, and I would also say that the core transformation work has played an important role there too.
Yeah.
And in my own practice, I sometimes go back to doing the core transformation on occasion when
Yeah.
I have the feeling like that's what my system needs right now.
Yeah.
And for example, when my husband passed away,
Yeah.
during that was a significant that was a big deal for me. We'd
Yeah.
been partners in everything, and family and work, in day-to-day life, and so losing him was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And I started core transformation is really good with dealing at a deep level with big chunks of emotional reactivity.
Mm.
And so, and that's what I was having right then, some big chunk emotional reactivity. And so I did some self-guided core transformation work then. It was very helpful. And then kind of went back to the wholeness work, which I think also really helped me. I could describe it as it helped me process his dying, his death.
Mm.
And to say more about just how it would take more teaching the wholeness work.
Of course. Yeah, I
But
understand.
this was it took me to this deeper level, I think, of relating to his death, and but in a practical, it's practical, useful. It made it easier for me.
Yeah. Uh, you say in the book, in fact, the book has a whole chapter on using the wholeness process as your daily practice.
Yes,
So you're quite clear that it can be used by someone upon themselves.
yes, yes,
The only reason I ask is that, with the advent of understandings about how neurons wire together, Hebron said neurons that fire together wire together. And now we know actually one neuron fires slightly before the other. So we have a phenomenon called spike time dependent plasticity. So it's the firing is slightly syncopated. And I often wonder, is that why applying patterns to myself doesn't seem to be very effective? Because I can't get ahead of my own firing.
yeah. I'm glad you shared that, Mark, because I think most people find that same thing to be true. For
Yeah,
most people, doing it alone is very difficult.
yeah,
Some people manage it, but for almost everyone, maybe everyone, it's just a heck of a lot easier to do it as a part of a community, or at
yeah,
least one other person.
yeah,
So that's why I think uh, sometimes people start with the book, and it shows you how you can self guide, and then people who resonate with it, I really encourage, if there's a way to do it, join the training, because then
yes,
you get to go through this, you guide each other, and this fire together thing, lovely image. It's excuse me, I think I
no,
need to
you're
do
okay. Yeah,
um yeah, this fire together. I experience that when I teach.
mm,
I guide someone through as a demonstration. And of course, I already know the work
yeah,
really well. But when I guide someone and am guiding their nervous system to experience it, I find that my nervous system resonates with theirs, and they're my teacher
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
I'm teaching them because I'm guiding them, but then as they go, as this experience is sort of unveiled or awakened in them, in their neurology, they become my teacher in that moment,
Yeah. I get it.
and everyone else's teacher on the call.
Yeah. Could be
And
mirror
then we,
neurons, I suppose. It could be mirror neurons at work, and the fact that we've been herd animals for
yeah,
thousands of
yeah,
years. Yeah.
yeah.
Brilliant.
So, and then in the paired practice, people get into pairs, they do it with each other, and who's the guide and who's being guided, you can't really tell because
Yeah.
we're really doing it together.
So, I want to let people that are watching and listening know how they can access the training. I know you've not got live ones until next year in the
Yes, yes.
fall.
And yet, anytime, like right now, at any moment, people can access the live online trainings. So, yeah, I would like to make two offers available for your people, Mark.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
One is I'm going to offer a free PDF of the book to anyone is interested, and it's a great way to start. The book
Definitely.
really, I worked really hard, and my editors worked really hard on
Yeah.
this, and we ran it by readers to really. The goal is to make it accessible as much as we can in printed form.
Mm.
So the book, I'm giving that away free as a PDF to your people.
Thank you. That's
And,
amazing.
and then also, I'd like to offer a discount for the streaming video program. And that's
Fantastic.
something that you can learn at your own pace from anywhere. You can watch the demonstrations. So that takes it a step farther.
Yeah.
And then if you want to go the next step, you come to a live online training. And you can find all of it at andreasnlp.com.
Yep. Be in the show notes as well.
Okay. AndreasNLP.com is where you can find information about the trainings and about including the streaming video program. And then to get the free offer, the free book PDF, we've created a special landing page for your people.
Oh, that's lovely.
And this is AndreasNLP.com/MH21.
My age.
That's it. So go there, type that in, AndreasNLP.com/ or / whichever it is. I'm not sure. The usual thing.
Yeah, we'll have it in the show notes as well. Have we got enough time for you to do us kind of a short demonstration using me as a subject? Have we got enough time
Let's
for that?
try that out.
Yeah,
Let's try that out.
because people can actually follow along while you're taking me through the process as well, can't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it, Mark.
do that.
I love it that you're interested in doing that.
I am.
So, okay, so let's start this really simply, and I'm going to do it along with you too. We'll do it together. So, if we just pause for a moment, get in a comfortable position, and perhaps take a deep breath, and then turn inward. We can close our eyes. Notice what we notice, and then just notice any body sensation at all. So, what's the first body sensation you notice?
Um, around my. Okay. I've got loads.
Okay, and if you have those,
I've got a few.
pick any of them.
All right. The first one that came to mind was a sort of like a lower stomach.
Lower
Feet.
stomach.
Yeah. So lower down. Um, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I got
And
it.
and what I was noticing, actually, mine was in a similar place. I was kind of noticing something in my abdomen too.
Yeah.
Maybe our neurons are
Yeah.
already
Who knows?
firing each other. So yeah, and so now notice how much space it takes up, approximately, and
Yeah.
its size and shape. Like mine is shaped kind of like an
Mi-
oval, sort of.
Yeah. Mine is oval. It's kind of like oval, but yeah, it's. 3D.
Yes,
It's
yes, 3D.
transparent.
So it has a certain depth to it
It
too.
does. It
Yes.
does. Yeah.
And people can find anything. It could be a tingling on the arms, it could be a feeling in the forehead, it could be anything. But
Yeah.
for you in this moment is this feeling in the abdomen,
Yeah.
and it's like shaped like an oval.
Yeah.
And now sensing in and through the space of this, what's the sensation quality? It might be something like heavy,
Light.
it might be
Y-
dense, it could be light, it could be moving or still.
Yeah. It's light. It's slowly rotating,
Okay, it's light and it's slowly rotating.
and it's
Okay,
white, but it's almost transparent.
almost transparent. Okay, okay. Now we go to the interesting question, because you could say, and it would be true, I am aware of this here in my abdomen that's light, that's slowly rotating, that's almost transparent, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
I am aware of this, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, where's the I that notices? Where's the I that is aware of this? And just notice the go with the first location that comes to
All
mind.
right. Across my shoulders.
Across my shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
great,
yeah, it's
great. And notice the size and shape of this.
well, it's like a yolk.
It's like a yolk. Okay. Shaped like a yolk.
It
Wonderful.
is.
Wonderful. And then sensing in and through the space of this yolk, like shaped like thing, just sensing in and through the space. What's the sensation quality? Is it
Heavy.
light? Is it
No,
dense?
it's heavy
Heavy. Okay.
and it's
It's heavy.
brown.
And is the heaviness something you feel because it's weighing on you, or if you sense in and through, is there heaviness within it?
Oh, what a good question that is.
Because we want to actually sense in and through the space of this.
Wow. No, it's dense.
It's dense. Okay.
There's a
Uh,
denseness to it.
yes, a denseness to it. Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And for people following along, this is where it's not going to be a matter of mirror neurons. We're each going to have our own unique answer to this. I'm just telling this to everyone else watching and
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, when I find the I, for me, it's this place outside my head in space, about this big around, and it's shaped kind of like a ball. And it's kind of like there's a slight fizziness inside,
Okay.
and mostly transparent. So that's
Okay.
what I'm getting. And everyone, if you're doing it at home, yours is going to be unique. So,
Yeah.
and we just honor how it emerges for each person, because there is no right or wrong
Yeah.
answer. It's always right,
Bit
however.
wacky. I mean, it's a bit wacky, really, isn't it? But what I'm saying is what is coming up.
Exactly. It's just what comes up.
Yeah.
And we can be surprised by it sometimes. And so now I'm going to go a little farther with this, Mark, because
Right.
since that's dense here around the shoulders,
Yeah.
sensing in and through this, you could say, and it would be true, I am aware of this
Yeah.
that's dense, right? I am aware of this. So where's the I that's aware of this? Where is the I that
It,
notices
it
this?
it's it's slightly behind me, and it's kind of like this.
Okay. Okay.
It's like this.
Quite large in shape. Yeah,
It's like
definitely.
a it's like a contact lens almost.
Okay. Does that mean it's kind of like a dome
Yes. Yeah,
of
like
something that's kind
concaved.
of thin?
It's concaved.
Concave. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
transparent. And it's transparent.
Okay, and it's transparent. So that's the thing with each of these, they're always going to be three-dimensional, just like things on the outside are three-dimensional. You
Yeah.
can have a contact lens and it's three-dimensional, even though it's thin, it has a certain
No, it
thickness
is.
to
It
it.
is three dimensional. There's no.
Yeah, so sensing in and through the space of that's this film or whatever it is, sensing in and through the space. What's the sensation quality in and through the space of this? It might be sticky, it might be smooth, it might be soft, it could be rough. It could be none of those, it could be something else. It could be a
It,
sense of space.
it's it's the word it's slimy, but that's not a bad thing.
Yes. Okay. Slimy.
It's
Yeah.
kind of lubricated.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah. Kind of. Yeah. Uh-huh.
it's,
Okay.
yeah, I know what I mean.
Great.
It's
Yes. Yes.
pleasant. It's not greasy, but it's
Yes, yes. So
yeah,
sensing this kind of smoothness quality, yeah, this or whatever, this
yeah,
lubricating quality, yeah. Sensing this, it's you could say, I am aware of this also, right?
yeah.
And where is the I that notices this?
Uh, I don't have a sense of that.
Oh, don't have a sense of that. Okay. Well,
Uh,
there's two possibilities. One is there's something that's just unusual. Maybe it's not something you expect, so it's more difficult to notice. So sometimes that happens if it's quite large, people, and it's like really a whole place in space, and it doesn't really have any borders.
yeah, that's coming close.
Okay.
I,
And,
I uh, uh, it's like um, I can't describe it. It's like knowing. It's like a knowing. I
yeah.
don't know. I can't describe
Yes,
it.
yes. And where's the location of this knowing?
There doesn't appear to be boundaries.
Okay, no boundaries. And is it more above than below or behind than in front? If there's a direction in which it's more present, what would,
It's definitely it's behind.
okay. Yeah. And does it seem to there's no boundaries, and yet
No,
does it seem to occupy most or all of that space there? And is there kind of a place, a center to it, or a place where there's more of it?
I have very difficult questions to answer because
Yeah, yeah. So you don't have to try. If they're
okay,
difficult questions to answer, then we just go with this general sense.
so, yeah,
So
sense,
this just
yeah,
general sense of space that's back there, that's more, yeah, it's more behind, and it's large and it has no borders.
yeah.
And so, and what we can just check is within this space of this that's large, that's vast, that's behind, no borders, what's the sensation quality in and through the space of this?
Stillness. There's a,
Illness.
a stillness.
Okay, great, great, great.
Um,
Excellent.
yeah,
Yeah.
no
And so
movement.
now we go to the next piece, which because you've already read the book and have some background, you will understand it. I think I'm just going to go right there. For when I want the listeners to know, when we teach this in a workshop, we build this up. We take some time to develop and understand the background experience. The next thing we do is experience what awareness is. So we go back to this statement, I am aware of this sensation. So the I we've explored, we know where it's located, we know its sensation quality. The sensation we've explored, we know where it's located, we know its sensation quality. We haven't explored this middle word, awareness. I am aware. And just the general experience of awareness, everyone can understand easily by just kind of recognizing, like in this moment, to just notice anything in my body. There's awareness is already through my body, or I wouldn't know it was
Mm,
there. Awareness is already in the space all around my body,
yeah,
because I have this capacity to experience sounds coming in from the right, from the left, from above, from below, any direction. There's this capacity to experience that's already present.
yeah.
Even before an experience happens, there's this capacity to experience. It's already there. So the experience of awareness is generally the experience of space in and through the body,
Mm,
this capacity to experience already there. And you can experience that right now, right, Mark? And
yeah,
I can too with
yeah.
you. This capacity, if somebody bumped me, I would just be aware of it. I wouldn't have to send my awareness
No,
there. It's already there.
yeah.
And if there's a sound outside, I don't have to send my awareness out to grab
No.
it. Just naturally received.
And
So
there's no separation from it either.
Yes, yes. It's just this vast experience of space all around. And in the training and in the book, we take more time to build that experience, as you
Mm,
know,
mm.
to cultivate it, we would call
Yeah, I understand.
cultivate it, access it. And but you already understand that. So now we go to the rather strange question invitation,
Right,
an
okay.
experiment, an inner experiment. We go to that last eye that we found, which was that sense of space behind, without boundaries.
I'm
Um,
aware of it now.
Stillness, yeah. And sensing the sensation itself in and through the area. Notice what happens when the sensation here is invited to open, relax, dissolve, melt in and as the space of awareness, the full space of awareness that is all around and throughout. So we're just inviting this to, for however that may want to happen. This that has been holding itself separate a little bit can just be invited to release itself in and as the full space of awareness that's all around and throughout. And that can just be allowed to happen, however happens naturally without effort.
Mm.
Yeah. And what's the experience of that?
Uh, Again, it's hard to. It's like uh, it's like flowing. There's a flowing,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Lovely.
like a melting of ice.
Yes. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And that can just continue.
cool.
And if there's a sense of it settling already, kind of settling, then we
Yeah,
can go to the next step, which is
yeah,
now we're going to check back to the eye that was before that, which was behind, that was kind of like
like
this.
a yolk.
Before it was kind of like a contact shape, like what's there now?
Oh,
Same, different.
it's not that.
It's not there.
Oh, it's not there. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
So since it ends, sometimes it's completely dissolved just from dissolving the last one,
yeah,
completely dissolves two on its own.
yeah.
Yeah, and we can just invite in case there's anything remaining, even at the unconscious level, it's also invited to dissolve and melt in and as the full field of awareness that's all around and throughout.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And then we go to the one before that, which was this place on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And how is that now? Is it the same as before, or is it a little different? What's there now?
Uh, it's, it's fluffy.
It's fluffy.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something there, but it's
There is
quite different.
something there. It's very different. It's fluffy
Yeah,
and light,
and light.
and the
Okay,
colors changed and all sorts.
great.
Yes.
Colors change, the weight has changed. So it's interesting how much things change
Yeah.
from the earlier piece. So now sensing in and through this fluffy, this that's fluffy here, the sensation of this, how it is now. Notice what happens when the sensation of this is also invited for whatever wants to happen, to dissolve and melt in and as the third field of awareness. And
Wow.
the dissolve, yeah, however naturally and easily happens is invited to happen.
Mm,
As
that's
it's
lovely.
really a letting go of effort, a releasing of the effort that had been there to maintain it.
Yeah. Well, that's weird. It's like paint in a sort of like an oily substance just
Mm,
dissolving.
great,
Yeah, it's
great.
nice. It's very pleasant.
And you can take your time and stay with it and just let it dissolve in its own way with its own tempo and just relax into the happening of this, however it easily happens.
Mm,
Yeah,
very nice.
lovely,
Mm,
lovely. That's beautiful. And then we go to the place before the starting place, which was in
yeah.
the stomach area. And how is that now? What's there now?
It's like I can remember what was there. but
Hmm.
it's different from the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to explain it. There's just a, uh, it's almost like there's a space there,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
like a space, the shape of it, but it's not
Uh-huh.
it.
Okay,
If that
lovely.
makes any sense at
Yes,
all, I
it
don't know.
does. It actually does. So just welcoming however it is now, sensing however whatever's there now, the sensation quality present there now. We can invite whatever integration wants to naturally happen. So it's already transformed so much. And this is the beginning of integration. Now we're just giving it its own invitation. We're meeting whatever remains, inviting this also to dissolve, melt in and as the wholeness of awareness that's throughout the body and perhaps all around,
Mm. It,
letting whatever naturally happens happen.
it's just not there.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Beautiful.
Wow.
Okay, so we got into that a little more than I expected to do in an introduction because we actually went into the layering of eyes, how the Eastern spirituality is about dissolving the ego, and how when we do that, it leads to a dissolving of lots of our ordinary problems.
Right.
And what there wasn't a recognition of is that actually the ego isn't a single thing, and that it tends to happen in a layering, and
Mm.
that when we discover this layering, it gives us an easy way in to discover the structure of what people sit in meetings and talk about forever,
Well,
but
that
actually get to the experience of.
that was something happened. That's the best
Uh-huh.
way to describe it. There was a felt sense of my body relaxing,
Uh-huh.
and the boundaries becoming less fuzzy. I can't describe it, but
Uh-huh.
that was good.
Yeah, thank you so much for just going there with me.
Oh,
And
it felt
this
good.
is this is an example for everyone who's here with you and I on this call,
Yeah.
on this video. This is an example of the whole. It's not the whole thing, but of the
No.
beginning whole thing, of the beginning whole thing of the wholeness work, because this that we could call the ego, that wholeness work gives us an easy way in to discover. This is how we literally maintain most of our problems, most of our stress, most
Yeah.
of our tension in life. So, and we don't even have to know what it is. We don't have to figure so much out. We can start with a simple body sensation, like we just did here. We can also start with a life issue, but we can
Yeah.
just start with a body sensation, and it can take us right there to
Wow.
some powerful structures that have been holding. Like if we were to understand it all, there would be certain beliefs that each of these eyes maintained, limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And as they dissolve, those limitations dissolve, and we're more present to life as it is, the fullness of life as it is.
Brilliant. That was fantastic. I good for me anyway. I,
Wonderful. Yeah, it's great for me to go along through it with you too.
wow. Well, I've done the video training. I can certainly recommend that, and it's very generous of you to offer discount. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome, Mark.
I normally thank you for all your time. You've been so generous in uh, allowing so much time. I normally ask a couple of quick fire questions at the end. All right.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, what are you reading at the moment?
Nothing.
Nothing. All right then. The last book you read, or the last, um, I don't know, piece of literature, or something you read that you really engaged with.
Let me think about that a little. One piece that comes to mind, this is now a couple of years ago, is what Steve and I read together.
Oh,
with an
lovely.
audiobook. And the end of his life, he could listen, but he couldn't track anymore visually. It was
Right.
strained for him to try to read, but he could take in auditorily. And he was always fully present, his being. So we enjoyed together several books. Let's see if I can recall the name now of the author.
That sounds lovely. My first wife, when she died, the breast cancer had metastasized to her brain. So she she was still who she was, but she wasn't. So one day she was upstairs with my daughter, and she said to my daughter, "That bald man downstairs," she said, "Have I got his number?" It was very lovely. But
Oh,
we weren't able to engage in that way.
yes,
So
yes.
being able
Yeah.
to listen to a book together, I imagine that was very lovely.
Quite lovely. And I just want to say, with your wife, I mean, my mother now, different people do end of life differently, everyone
Yeah,
uniquely. And for some, Steve was happy that his presence of mind was there. But I like to think that if it wasn't, if he didn't recognize me anymore,
yeah,
that there would, in some ways, that can free us up for a different kind of connection.
definitely. I I have a sense of what you're saying
Yeah. A different
inside
kind of connection
yeah.
that's somehow not to do with our identities, our usual identities.
Yeah, I can identify with that from my experience. Yeah.
So anyway, with my husband, we'd listen to Atul Gawanda.
I'd say it again. A toga wonder.
Atul Gawanda, he's a doctor, a medical doctor. Atulgawande, I think is how you spell the name.
Got it?
And he has several books. They're all good, and they're specifically I like him, and Steve likes him because he's a precise thinker. He has integrity. He has heart. And as a doctor, he's looking at the system of the whole system of providing healthcare services from
Wow.
from a system structural point of view. So he goes deeper into things, just like we like to do with NLP.
Nice.
So
That's a good recommendation. Now, I'm guessing you don't have much time to watch TV, right?
I actually watch TV on occasion these days.
All right. So have you got any film or series recommendations? Something you've watched recently that you've
Mm, mm.
really enjoyed and are not embarrassed to say so?
you know, um, that's an interesting thing. I think I use TV and movies for different things. So,
Same.
there's one that I liked recently that was about. Let's see, I have trouble remembering the names,
Don't
but
worry.
it was about a young man who's I think from Africa. And it was his story growing up in a poverty situation. And I think it was Harnessing the Wind. The title is something like
All
that.
right. Okay.
And it was true to life. It told the story of how he made this discovery, and he had to sneak into school to learn enough engineering and science to do it. But then he ended up saving his family because they were able to figure out how to get water, how to get out
Wow.
of the ground, and how to
Sounds
so
good.
harnessing the wind, something like that. It was called. Then
Brilliant.
there are other. I enjoyed this something about. Is it Stephen Hawking? Just his life. I enjoy things about the life of these people, of interesting people. But I also enjoy some things that could be considered total waste of time.
Right. Let's you
and I,
give us a sense of one of those.
and, okay. Let's see. Let me think about something that was. I have trouble with names, but
That's all
if you
right.
just go online, you can find stuff. What I want to tell you is share is how I get something out of them.
Yeah, go on.
Maybe this is just me trying to make it socially redeeming, even when it's not. But what I discovered, what I found is that when I was going through my intense phase of electricity surging through my body, I could not expose myself to any TV at all. It was as if it was all running through my nervous system, and it was overwhelming. It was too strong. And as I gradually learned that if I And the wholeness work was really helpful to me with this, to learn to be able to process it so that it wasn't harmful anymore. It was
Yeah.
somehow, it was like it was composted. And
Yeah.
the wholeness work is all about composting our experience so that we take even difficult experiences, we compost them, and they become then the nourishment for new
Yeah.
life, new
Nice.
possibility.
It's a lovely
And
metaphor.
and and we can, the thing is, we can do this with TV and movies as well as with our own experiences.
Yeah.
So I would find that at first I really couldn't tolerate in a movie or anything that had anything intense or violent or anything. I'd watch a movie that my kids were watching about, some lumber person being in a dangerous situation and somebody getting hurt. And the images would be in my brain when I try to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So I would use wholeness work to process these. And I started noticing that the more things I processed, and then it'd be a relationship thing. I'd watch maybe a sitcom or whatever, but it was some relationship glitch happened. And it would trigger something in me. I would resonate somehow, and the image would stay with me.
Yeah.
So I would process this using wholeness work. And I discovered that gradually my range expanded, where I could watch something and it wouldn't leave a footprint.
Wow.
So
That's
this is
interesting.
like the psychological version of the Japanese thing about being able to walk on rice paper without leaving a footprint,
Mm.
And it's once things are processed and composted, and our own reactivity to them is processed and composted. It's like we can show up and be present for a wider range of life
Yeah.
without having the personal reactivity getting in the way.
Yeah. Excellent.
So I think it serves that purpose for me, that dual purpose.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you again, Connie Ray, for being willing to be interviewed. And I feel like I've got loads of stuff to ask you about the wild days of NLP, but maybe for another time.
Okay.
So, uh,
Sounds good.
thanks for being with us, Connie Ray.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the
Thank
interview.
you.
Great to spend this time together.
Lovely. And thanks for listening. That's us. We're done. Bye.
Bye bye.